Good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Jorgensen, and on behalf of Sustainable Business Hub, I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar on how to become a supplier to international relief organizations. Sustainable Business Hub is a network of private companies, public stakeholders, and academic organizations. And our mission is to accelerate innovation and business development for sustainable solutions. So we're organizing this webinar today as part of the Cleantech Impact Accelerator. This is an EU-financed initiative that supports startups and small enterprises with training and technical validation, as well as opportunities to engage in one-on-one meetings with corporates. Our partners in this project are RISE in Sweden, as well as Clean and Agribusiness Park in Denmark. Our first cohort started their journey earlier this spring, and we'll be opening the applications for the second round later this year, so the second half of 2020. So please keep an eye on our website, sbhub.se, and sign up for our newsletter so you can be sure to keep up with any developments. So today I have the pleasure of introducing our 4 speakers. We'll start off with Claes Arvidsson of Business Sweden, and he's going to explain how Business Sweden works to help small companies navigate the UN procurement system. He will be followed by Jan-Erik Smith of Abigo, who's going to tell us about how his medtech company collaborated with the World Health Organization. Then we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we will have Sarah Emond introduce us to the UNOPS Global Innovation Center in Sweden and explain to us how they help innovators engage with UNOPS and their opportunities all around the world. And last but not least, we'll have Stan Stenbeck of RISE talk about a Vanova finance initiative that promotes collaboration between innovators and aid organizations, where their aim is to bring circular solutions to those most in need. If you have questions for the presenters, please write to me, Ben Jorgensen, in the chat function, and make sure you name the person that you would like me to direct your question to. Depending on the time, I'll either take your questions up following each presentation if there's any remaining time. Otherwise, I will do so at the conclusion of the webinar. So please, if you have questions, make sure you write to me in the group chat. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to Claes.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Let's see if I can also share my screen. So everyone can see my screen now? Yes. Thank you very much, Ben. Very happy to be here and to hear that there are so many participants here in the meeting interested in the UN market and how to do business with the UN and collaborate with the UN. And so as Ben said, I will give you a short introduction to the UN and also how we at Business Sweden work with helping Swedish companies to do business with the UN. So starting with a short introduction of Business Sweden. Business Sweden is a semi-governmental organization working with helping Swedish companies to grow their international sales. We are about 500 business developers and experts located in around 50 offices around the world. And we work with market expansion, public affairs, sales acceleration, and business incubation services to help companies grow their revenue and shorten time to markets. So for business with the UN, Business Sweden has a mission from the Swedish government to support Swedish companies and grow the share of Swedish companies that sell to international organizations such as the UN. And therefore we have set up a team around this located close to all the big UN hubs and offices around the world. So you can see that we have a colleague, Oscar, in Stockholm, who's the overall responsible, and then it's me and my colleague Eric here in Copenhagen, and then yeah, basically covering all the other main hubs, and also working with ADEX in Brussels, the Fair for Humanitarian Aid. So going into the UN then, the United Nations, as you all know, works with confronting the global issues we are faced with around the world, and supporting where it's needed. It was founded in 1945 and is made up by many affiliated programs, funds, and agencies, all with their own memberships and leaderships and budgets. And this is very important to remember when you look at becoming a supplier to the UN, and that it's not one entity, but it's many different organizations, and they all have a little bit their own way of working, their own challenges, and so it's important to kind of get to know your customer. And some of the issues the UN is working with is peace and security, climate change, sustainable development, human rights, disarmament, anti-terrorism, humanitarian health and emergencies, as they are well known for, but also gender equality and helping companies with governance, voting, etc., and also food. And this is just a few examples. So to find a way through the UN, it's a little bit complex when you start working on it. As I said, it's a very large amount of different organizations and entities, and but mainly you can say that the UN activities are divided into three categories: development operations, projects, and peacekeeping operations, and humanitarian operations, and including emergency response. And this can be quite good to have in the back of your mind when you're dealing with a UN organization, because then you can better understand how they work and what their main focuses are. And it can also influence a little bit how they procure, what are the delivery requirements, and so on. And of course, many of these companies are also working together, collaborating in many areas, and not least also procurement. So sometimes they share, for example, common long-term agreements and so on. And also some UN organizations can be guiding or putting standards that also the other organizations then are using when they procure. So why is then Business Sweden working with the UN? Of course, it is because we see a large potential for Swedish companies to export. Sweden is also a major donor to the UN system, approximately 1% of the regular budget. And in addition to that, also to some specialized agencies and programs. So you can basically say that UN is a very large logistics operation. So they procure a lot of products and see that they are delivered to where it's needed. Last year, the total procurement from the UN system was $19 billion US dollars. 2018. Sorry. And this has been then growing the last couple of years, and it's if you compare it, it's equivalent to the annual imports of a small country, quite small country, but still it gives some perspective to this huge amount. So the Swedish footprint is rather small. It goes a little bit up and down, and I think we have generally become better and better, but there's still potential for Swedish companies to sell more and for Sweden to become a larger supplier to the UN. Also, if you look at, for example, neighboring countries such as Denmark are doing much better, and therefore we see that the UN offers great opportunities for Swedish companies, and we can become much more active here. So looking at what the UN procures, it's a very wide range of products and services. You see here below that it's more or less 50-50 products and services. The UN system and organizations, they of course procure globally. They have often an aim to procure as much as they can from local suppliers where in those countries that they work, of course, to support the local economy there, as it's in their mandate. But in many categories, they also procure more from the Western economies, and I think it's at least about 50% that they procure not locally. As you can see here, there are very many different categories, and looking in below these category levels, there are of course many subcategories of products and services. So it's a little bit hard to find out where your product or services fits in, but in UNGM, the global marketplace, you can find some statistics that can help you. Looking at the chart here, you see that pharmaceuticals is all, of course, and vaccines a really big part of what the UN procures, and also transportation. As I said, it's a logistics engine, you can say. And we also have a lot of food and beverage, both nutritional products and more commodity type food. Management and admin services, just as any other large organizations. The UN procures and has the needs of these kinds of services, consultants, and also IT systems and communication. For the projects, they procure a lot of engineering consultancies. Fuels is the big category, and of course medical equipment. Looking at the little bit smaller categories here, and they look small here on the chart, but they are still quite large volumes, can be. And here's some examples of how it can impact an SME that starts to sell to the UN. We have, for example, here a Swedish order for furniture of around $1.7 million US, which is of course a major deal for an SME. And we have some other examples here of prefab structures from $0.1 million and with more in the pipeline. So for SMEs and also large cap, if you have the matching products that is demanded within the UN, there is really a big potential to sell and also to have recurring revenues for those types of procurement categories that are procured over and over again. So some of the products and solutions that Business Sweden sees special demands for are within here for the HQ and main offices, transport and logistics solutions, as I told you before. Here is also not only services but also products are very interesting. Containers and storage, for example, air cargo, and also IT around that, and all kinds of smart solutions that can make it cheaper and easier and quicker to transport and get the products in place fast, especially for those organizations that work with emergency response. It's of course very important to get the product and food, for example, in place as soon as possible, and it's also possible to transport it after it arrives to the country. So the in-country transport is also quite important and of course quite challenging, especially if there has been, for example, a natural disaster or something like that, or a conflict area. So solutions that can be easily transportable is of course very relevant. Then the UN, we have also seen some large contracts, for example, furniture, design and construction, when the UN buys or expands and procure new buildings and such for their HQs and main offices. So large construction projects is also very relevant and a big category that shows up. ICT and digitalization, like many other organizations, UN is also working on this topic and try to use smart technology, of course, to help with their operations. We've seen, for example, Ericsson selling some big contracts to the UN, also in collaboration with the Danish firms, for example. So here, I think also in the UN city here in Copenhagen could be an interesting customer for companies in the IT and IT sector, providing both services and solutions, of course. And I think also in this day and age, for example, Skype and other digital platforms that can facilitate communication is even more interesting as well. So if we look a little bit to the field instead, we got camps and shelter is a really big category also. The UN procures an enormous amounts of tents, for example, and prefabricated structures. It can be also for storage, storing food, for example, and also medical housing or hospitals. Other field solutions can be solar energy, and for example, in combination with cold chain, where solar-powered refrigerators, for example, for vaccines, but also for food. Other types of specialized equipment, such as thermal blankets, wash, hygiene and sanitation is a big focus area for many UN agencies as well. There we have latrines, and in many of the camps, the products and solutions are quite basic. It's important for the UN to have a cost-efficient operation so they can help as many as possible. So of course, cost and price is a very important point, but of course the quality of the product and how it fits in the local environment is another key aspect of it. And there we also have waste management solutions and cleaning equipment and so on. And the UN procures quite a lot of these types of consumables, and these are also kind of recurring contracts and long-term agreements. So I think there's a large potential for companies selling those kinds of products. In the field also, water is a very important area and a great challenge in the world to be able to provide clean water for both drinking and washing, etc. So here is, for example, water pumps, other types of water treatment, both kind of the chemical, but also other solutions how to treat and clean water, water storage, and of course testing. And IoT is an interesting area that I think spans over several of the UN's operations, where IoT can come in and help them in a smart way to know where things are and the status of different equipment and stockpiles, etc. Then looking in at the health side, I've mentioned pharmaceuticals once before, and as you can see here, it's a lot of vaccines that is used, of course, to fight the difficult kind of pandemics that we have around the world. And also contraceptives is a big procurement area, and other kinds of medicines. We also look at wound care products, for example, that Jan-Erik will tell you a little bit more about later. Refrigerators is a big area, mosquito nets, testing solutions, and lab equipment as well. On the food side, the UN procures a lot of ready-to-use therapeutic foods, for example. to fight malnutrition, and here is also the packaging, of course, important, and yeah, it's also everything from bottled water to grains and wheat products, and also supplements such as vitamins and minerals that we have seen potential for Swedish companies to come in and sell. Looking at the current situation in the world, it's of course largely dominated by the COVID-19 crisis in the media, but also for the UN, who is working a lot with this, and of course with the huge haste and needs to procure very quickly all these things that they need related to this, and it's, for example, UNOPS, but as I've heard, there is many of not all of the UN organizations working with this in some way or another. And what we've seen so far, I think you should not take these two lists as the whole picture, but just examples of what we have seen that the UN is looking for. And for the COVID-19 response, we've seen a lot of PPE and then personal protective equipment such as masks, goggles, face shields, all of this equipment that governments around the world is in need of, and that we've also seen a lot of coverage in the media that this can be hard to find and procure. Gloves and overalls, etc. Also, of course, cleaning products, as we've become used to wash our hands, and also with alcohol. So that is something that is, of course, also procured. Then we have some other technologies, more in the laboratory equipment, cabinets, for example, analyzers and test kits, of course. We got medical devices such as respiratory support, diagnostics, monitoring, refrigeration, and also furniture and sterilization. And then of course some medicines and antivirals, and healthcare infrastructure, such as mobile facilities and modular buildings that can quickly be set up where it's needed. They also actually are looking for ambulances. So vehicles is another segment that I haven't mentioned so much, but vehicles is also a big procurement area from the UN. So if we look a little bit more on the process, we've been through a little bit what they procure, and if you haven't seen your product or services in the list, it doesn't mean that the UN doesn't procure it. If you want to know more, you could go into the United Nations Global Marketplace to try to find tenders and statistics on your products and services, or you could contact us at Business Sweden, and we can help you to see and understand if the UN is procuring your products or solutions. So the UN procurement process is a quite formal affair. it's similar to or is public procurement, but with a little bit less transparency than what we are used to in Sweden. So the process or the demand arises in some of the UN programs or activities around the world. So a lot of it starts at local office level, where the demand arises, and so the local offices there have personnel that is also working with procurement, and then they initiate a formal procurement process, where it's, as I said, quite formal communication, and it's important there to know how to communicate. And as a supplier, you're not allowed to, for example, communicate with the procurement officers, or they are not allowed to communicate with you in ways that give you an advantage of other companies, of course, or can influence the procurement process. So there it's important to follow these rules, and when the procurement process then is initiated on the local level, sometimes they involve central procurement departments that the UN organization has, and they often have some specialities on the in the areas where their organization procures a lot, of course, and also gets involved when it comes to more long-term agreements and larger tender offerings. Most tenders is publicized on the UN GEM, or at least the larger ones. There are also a number of other UN websites or platforms where tenders are communicated. So it's important to get to know them and to register and get a good profile on the UN GEM, so that your company can be found by the procurement officers when they are about to do a tender, and to describe your company in best way, of course, so that it matches your offering and looks interesting to the procurement officers. Then the procurement is done, can be done in a bit different, or the tender can be done in a bit different ways. There are, for example, expression of interests that are more for gathering knowledge and understand what kind of solutions are out there. Invitation to bid is another tender form, or a request for proposal. And then, of course, bids are evaluated and contracts awarded. And after contracts has been awarded, sometimes it can be publicized. Not all are publicized, and the tender awards, but it can also be found at UN GEM. And in some instances, there is also a bid opening where all the bids are read out loud, and also with the price and the delivery terms. So this is a very good way to attend those, to learn about your competition and to fine-tune your offering. So this is something that we recommend, and but it's also something that has to be done in person, so it requires some travel. But it's also a service that we provide the Swedish companies, so we can attend them for you, so you don't have to travel to the UN offices where it's held. So if you're thinking of becoming a supplier to the UN, it's quite important to understand where you are and is your product being tendered today? What is the requirements? Can you meet all the requirements, or do you have to change a little bit on your product, or do you need to try to communicate to the UN that you have maybe a different kind of solutions that they procure today, but that can meet the same challenges and demand that they use other products for today. So this is kind of how we see that you should start going ahead when approaching the UN, and it's also a methodology that we use. So if we have the two examples here, the main one, if your product is tendered by the UN, you should go ahead and analyze the tenders to see if how is it procured? Is it procured as a standalone, or is it part of a package or some kits? If it's a standalone, you can just go ahead, apply for tenders, and also work on building a network and getting known in the UN as a supplier. It's important then to ensure that you have the capability of delivering. You have to become good at or take in help for the tender to become good at writing tenders and find the price point and how we can compete. And it's and then of course a set network and deliver with quality. And another alternative is if the product is procured but is part of a larger package, and then you can sometimes bid for slots. So there's a large tender, but you can bid on your part of the tender, or you will have to supply the entire kit or what is procured. Maybe you can't do that, so then you would try to find partners, so you can sell to a partner that in turn sells to the UN. The other alternative here is if the product is not procured by the UN today, then you will need to understand the UN needs and see if your product matches these needs. Is there a need for product adaptation? And if you can't see a clear match, of course, look for another market. The UN is not the right place. But if you can see that your product can support the UN in any way, and do it in a better way than the products that they procure today, then of course you have to get your solution known by the correct UN stakeholders and decision makers. And this requires a little bit of work and stakeholder mapping and such. And this is also something we work a lot with to help Swedish companies understand who are the decision makers in the UN, so that we can help them promote these innovative solutions. So 11 tips to win the tender. First, register at UNGM. This is the first starting point for you to be able to bid on tenders and also to learn about the UN. Keep on the lookout for expression of interests, because this is the way that the UN communicates their requirements to the business world. Figure out the winning strategy for each types of solicitation, as they differ a bit. Select the right tender, and make sure that you can meet all the mandatory requirements, because otherwise it's a waste of both your time and the procurement officers. So study them well. and also identify evaluation criteria and understand how it will be assessed. Always respond to bid invitations so that the UN can see that you're active and want to be a supplier. Of course, as with any customer, it's important to be precise and maximize your competitive advantage and how you can communicate this. Don't forget to study the terms and conditions so that you know what you sign up for. Also provide quality statements in the bid submissions and prepare the bid in the best way so that it's easy to understand and go through for the procurement officer. And of course, respect form and deadlines is very important. Otherwise, it's easy that you can be disqualified to participate in the tender. And after, ask for a debrief, which allows you to understand and go back here to understand how you should maximize your competitive advantage and know your bidding strategy. And it's also important to know that this is a learning process and it will take time. So nobody finds the right formula probably the first time. So bidding is about persistence and fine-tuning your offer so that you can come in and compete. So a little bit shortly on Business Sweden and how we help companies. What we do towards the UN and helping Swedish companies, it's different programs that we have, but we also can help companies individually, like with consultancy assignments, helping them with stakeholder mapping and understanding how to get their products in to the UN system and the process for getting them approved and then tested and so on. But then we also have this UN tender program, which is kind of a business development process, which is a combination of individual advisory and more group-based education sessions. So we do an opportunity assessment where we look at the business opportunities for a company. We help you understand which are the organizations and how are they working. We provide submission support so we can assist companies in doing the best tender they can, and here we also have external experts on this. In the program then also, of course, a big value is that you do it together with a group of between 6 to 8 other companies, and you can learn from each other and start to build your network. And we also help you get in touch with the people in our network, such as, for example, trading houses that can help you sell and become your kind of distributor to the UN. And this is also done then in as a coordinated approach together with our other activities. So we have a lot of delegations and events each year directed to the UN, where we meet the UN and we discuss with the UN experts on different thematics, for example, healthcare or a WASH, and kind of help them and the private industry to talk on the issues they face and find innovative solutions to their needs. So I think that's what's all for today. And Ben, if you would like to open up for some questions now, or we take it maybe later on in the end.
I think we'll have to take any questions later on the end. But now we'll hear from Jan Erik, whose company has actually gone through this process. So thank you very much, Klaas. And Jan Erik, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ben. I will stretch my screen here. Just 1 sec. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, look good.
Perfect, thank you. So my name is Jan Erik Smith. I work for a healthcare company called Abigo. And we have been going through this UN tender program that Klaas mentioned before, and have managed to get a pilot study with the World Health Organization, which is one of the steps of becoming a supplier within the medical area for the UN organization. And I'm going to share a bit, firstly, about who we are and what we do, and secondly, a bit about our journey together with the World Health Organizations and the UN, and also the tender program, my experiences from that, how it was to go through this process. So a bit about Abigo. We are a healthcare company with headquarters in Gothenburg in Sweden, around 200 employees. Our main focus is on antimicrobial wound management products, and we participate in the fight against antibiotic resistance. We also have other products. For instance, we have products within the ventilators, so we are also participating in the fight against the COVID-19. And as you can see here on the right side, we had some issues getting our products into the country, but been very lucky to get very good support from the Swedish Foreign Ministry and also the European Union around this. We have R&D microbiology laboratory at our headquarters in Sweden. Also manufacturing site in Askersund that you can see on the right side there. We have sales in over 65 countries, and we are market leaders in several European countries for antimicrobial wound management products. A bit of what we do. As you know, penicillin is one of the greatest discoveries in modern medicine, discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928. Prior to this discovery, 90% of all patients would die in pneumonia. And even a wound infection could result in death. As you can see here on the graph on the right side, on the other hand, only about 10% would die after the discovery of penicillin. But today, the situation is quite different. We are starting to see a lot of multi-resistant bacteria. And antibiotics is used in agriculture, in hospitals, more or less every type of surgery. So this is a big concern today. And here you can see back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, a lot of antibiotics was developed, but the past years, very few has been developed. It's not the focus of big pharma. And more or less all of these have shown resistance today. So there are very few products available today, and we will see more deaths coming. There was a review in 2016 that estimated that by 2050, 10 million people will die every year, and there will be a cost of $100 trillion related to antibiotic resistance. And as you can see here on the graph here as well, more people are expected to die of antimicrobial resistance than by cancer every year. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who is the Director General of the World Health Organization, has said that antibiotic resistance is one of the greatest threats against the health of humanity. So this is really one of the top concerns of the WHO. How do we come into this? Our role is that all chronic wounds, they contain bacteria. It could be E. coli or Pseudomonas aeruginosa. And these infections can many times lead to sepsis, which often leads to death. Amputations is one way to manage this, that if you get an infected wound, you can perform an amputation. And this is what we see in a lot of developing countries. So what does our product do? Our product is called Sorbact, and it can safely reduce the bioburden in the wound. It binds the common bacteria in the wound, the multi-resistant bacteria, and it doesn't have any, instead of going in with some type of poison or something to kill the bacteria, it binds it like a big magnet. And today there is no mechanism of antimicrobial resistance to this solution, and it facilitates the wound healing process. And we can show with very strong data that we prevent surgical site infections. We have studies in over 4,000 patients done in a number of countries where we can show a very strong risk reduction. And these are our products that we're selling with all type of wounds. So we have different solutions depending on what type of wound you have. So that was a bit about us. And then I would like to speak a bit about our experience within these humanitarian organizations and how we came in contact with them. So our initial contact with these humanitarian organizations was through networking. And Business Sweden played an important role in that process. We first participated as a delegation with the Red Crescent organization in Geneva. I will speak a bit more about that later and our experiences from that. Secondly, we attended the UN tender program as well. And apart from this networking part, there are also other ways to reach out to these organizations. And there's also, you can start up a specific dedicated project around it and also work with Business Sweden. We did this, our first phase was the networking, and then we did the dedicated projects where you can meet with opinion leaders and technical experts. The other option is, of course, to start out in the field, to initiate projects directly in low resource environments. So start up a project directly in Africa, say, or so. That's another approach to it. So a bit around our experiences with the Red Cross delegation. That was our initial experience within this area. We went there and we had the opportunity to meet with different purchasers within different areas. And the same thing for you, you can meet with the purchasing people within your area. There were actually contracts signed already during the delegation meeting. So a lot of companies were successful. And most of the purchasers that you meet with, they have good experience of working within the area. So for instance, for me, I was meeting with nurses who had good experience of working with wound care products, which was really good to be able to speak with someone who has the right experience. Another part of this was, of course, the whole networking aspect, that you got to meet with other companies. There was a buffet and a dinner at Ambassador's Residence in Geneva. And very interesting to hear about all these fantastic companies we have in Sweden with so much potential. Also, we got to meet with the innovation organization and listen to the change that is going on, also with the Red Cross organization. So what was the outcome of this? From my side, I did not sign any contract or so, but it really created an interest in the market. And what you can say is that ICRC today, they have a lot of their main purchasing operations in China, buying directly most of the Me Too products. But they are quite open that they want to make a transition. It should not only be a focus on price, but they're also big interest in innovation and getting more complex products. So we are starting to see this transition within this organization. Also, another trend that we see is that a lot of the products that they are purchasing are so starting just more locally. So, for instance, I was speaking a lot on supplying for at the time, big crisis in Syria. and they are buying most of their products, for instance, in Lebanon instead of purchasing it locally. So we're seeing a trend also that more and more products are being sourced locally. So by having business operations set up in these countries, such as, for instance, Turkey or Lebanon, you can actively reach out to this market. A bit about the UN tender program that Claes explained a bit here before. It's a process that went on for about half a year, and it started out that we met with other companies. So we had a first meeting in Stockholm, where we could meet with other companies, some who had good experience of working with UN since before, and some that had no experience at all. We did not have any previous experience, so it was a really good exchange to listen to these companies who previously had interacted with the organization and had really good experience. This was valuable to us to listen to these companies. Also, another experience from our side was that it's a good experience is to adapt your presentation and your offering to the UN in accordance with the Sustainable Development Goals. So a lot of the companies there that had been successful had positioned their product to capture all the Sustainable Development Goals. So when you create your presentation, you can capture these 17 different ones and see how you as a company can add value to these different goals. And that I found really useful. And also that Claes mentioned before, the UGM portal, it can be really useful to have this in mind with the Sustainable Development Goals. Otherwise, there was a seminar in Copenhagen on the 11th, 12th, and 13th of November. And during the full days, there were seminars around what it meant to be a supplier to the UN, listening to various parts of the organization of the UN. And apart from this, there was a lot of one-to-one meetings with different parts of the UN. So I was meeting with, for instance, UNOPS, UNICEF, PAHO, Pan American Health Organization. And this, I was sitting with people who were responsible for my category, discussing the opportunities to purchase our products. The general feedback that I received from most of the purchasing people I met with was that they follow the guidelines from the World Health Organization. And if you're not in the guidelines for WHO, you are not eligible to sell products if you have a more complex product. If you sell a commodity, it's not as strict, but if you have a complex product, you need to be in the guidelines. So this was the reason that we became very interested in working closer with WHO and getting into guidelines, of course, so that we can do business with the UN. So we started up a project together with Business Sweden, where we had a target effort to become guidelines. And we had a meeting with different committees. WHO is a huge organization with different committees, so we met with quite a few of them. We met with a group for antibiotic resistance. We met with several clinical experts that are closely cooperating with WHO. We met with, excuse me, with a few professors also that were related to the organization and had a close cooperation with them. And the initial thing we did is that we went to the office and participated in a congress around a disease that is called Buruli. It's I will speak more about it later. But we met with mainly doctors, around 150 doctors from Africa. And what you can see is that we have clinical studies on over 4,000 patients, as I mentioned before, but quite few of these studies are done in a low resource environment. They're done at hospitals in Europe, North America, and Southeast Asia. So the outcome that we had from this meeting is that we managed to secure 2 pilot studies that will be initiated in Africa. And we have an ongoing pilot study right now in Ghana that is concerning the Buruli ulcers that I mentioned before. And Buruli is a tropical disease that is affecting mainly small children, and it's a flesh-eating bacteria. It's caused by insects, and today how you treat it is that you give them vast amounts of antibiotics. And we have previously done a study at the Pasteur Institute in Paris, where we can show that with our technology in combination, we can effectively combat the bacteria and increase the outcome of patients with this. And our experience from the pilot so far with the World Health Organization, here a bit of insights that I share with you, is that in a low resource environment, it can be quite difficult to get the focus from the local team on a pilot study, as so many daily issues. They have quite low resources, really struggling in their operations, so that can be a challenge. The benefit there is to involve a strong partner. So we involved the partner university, London School of Tropical Medicine, which is one of the leading universities in the world in this area, who work together with us. They're right now in Ghana, working together with a local team and making sure that everything goes according to plan. And I think also it's important to set a very clear timeline. We had discussions already before this with a few teams in Africa, and it's really important that you set a very clear timeline and outcomes from the studies, that things are done correctly. And then I would say that patience is really important. A good study can take up to 2 years, so it's you need to look at this as a long-term investment when you look at this. So what is our key takeaways from working with the World Health Organization? World Health Organization is an organization with many committees. It is important to be open and discuss with the different parts of the organization. You never know which committee you might be the right one to open up the door for you and your technology, because it can be so many different ones. So it's good to be open and meet as many people as possible. There are many universities that are linked to the WHO in different parts of the world. So also by working with the WHO, it can be an enabler to reach out to your message, not only in low resource environments, but also to other parts of the world, as they are working so closely with different all across the world. I think that's something that we can see now with COVID-19, how the World Health Organization has really cooperated with authorities all over the world. And achieving a pilot study or a local reference case is what we see the key to achieving a classification in the system. So if you want to do business within the medical area with complex products with the UN, this is a really good way to do it. Get a local reference within the system will be a big benefit, because then you can refer to something that has been used in the system. And of course, also it's a good potential PR value from this. For us, of course, we're not only doing it for the business. It's also the goodwill, and of course, having good PR is a good benefit of this. Some additional benefits of working with the World Health Organization is that they are writing also the global guidelines around healthcare, and that is circulated globally. So here on the right side, for instance, you can see that they have written a wound and lymphodia management guideline. And they are on a regular basis arranging events also for high-level decision makers to introduce innovative solutions. And I know it was planned for this year that they would going to introduce a few Swedish innovative products to high-level decision makers across the world. Might probably be not happening right now due to COVID-19, but for the future, they are arranging these type of high-level decision maker events where you can meet with ministers of health and so forth. And the organization also has a worldwide network, as I mentioned before, with contacts in countries it would not be possible to get in contact with otherwise. So I met, for instance, during the Brule Congress, people from Central African countries that we would never be able to meet with otherwise if it wasn't through the WHO. Yeah, that was my presentation. So thank you for your time, and I wish you best of luck on your work working with the humanitarian organizations. And if there's any questions, please ask. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan-Erik. If anybody has questions right now, please write them in the chat function, and I will take them up now. So there's a question here. How do you find the events that the WHO arranges, and what are they called?
I mean, the World Health Organization is a big organization with different type of events. But I participated at this Brule Congress. That is a specific congress then for this type of indication, this disease. And I found it extremely good. You had around 150 participants from mainly different African countries, with people with tremendous insights around the disease, but at the same time a lot of academia from other parts of the world. So they have an extremely good network and can be a good enabler for you. It's my experience.
And how did you find out about it? Did Business Sweden tip you about it, or were you kind of keeping an eye out for WHO arranged events?
So I think what created my initial interest was the dialogue with Business Sweden. And when I participated at the UN tender program, I met with all the purchasing people, and they were saying that a really good way in for you would be to work closely with WHO and meet with the technical experts. And then we initiated a project together with Business Sweden, and Business Sweden was very supportive in the whole process, and also working with Business Sweden opened up a lot of doors for us, because Sweden is, of course, an important donor both to the UN and particularly, I would say, for the Red Cross as well, where we are through SIDA, one of the biggest actually funding countries in the world. So working with Business Sweden opened up a lot of doors in getting meetings with technical experts and different parts of the organization.
Thank you for that good answer. Are there any other questions before we close for the break? If not, then we will take our pause now, and we will return at 10 o'clock on the dot, where Sarah will talk about the UN Ops Global Innovation Center in Sweden. If you think of any questions in the meantime, please write them in the chat, and I will try to take them up at the conclusion of the webinar. So thank you again, Jan-Erik, and we will start again at 10 o'clock. o'clock now, so we will get started with the second half of our program. And we will start with Sarah Iman, who will tell us about the Global Innovation Center in Sweden. So, Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ben. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you online today. I will be happy to take you through what we are working on in the UNOPS Global Innovation Center, Sweden. So let me share my screen with you. So, UNOPS Global Innovation Center, Sweden. Maybe you have heard of this already, maybe not. I would like to take you through what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and also some news on what's going on right now. Hopefully this will be inspiring and fun for you. So, as you can see here, we are funded by Vinnova in Sweden. And we are also working very closely together with Ideon Science Park, who are actually hosting us. So that is where our center is located physically, if you haven't heard that already. But let's start with UNOPS as such, because maybe as before this adventure started, maybe you don't know that much about UNOPS. So if we start like this, UNOPS, as you also could see here earlier in the presentation by Klaus, is one of many, many UN agencies working on a lot of different areas. And UNOPS is quite a lot behind the scenes, you can say. It's not one of the big ones that we usually read about in media, etc. UNOPS, although, is turning 25 years old this year, so we've been around for a while. But UNOPS is working quite a lot on behalf of the other UN agencies, a lot with procurement, so very much linked to what we're talking about today. And a very good example of that is, of course, what we could see in the list about the COVID-19 response, where UNOPS is doing a very widespread procurement effort on behalf of a lot of other UN agencies, governments around the world, etc. This is, by the way, something that you can go in and read about at unops.org if you're interested in learning more. So you can say that UNOPS is working on behalf of other UN agencies and governments around the world, primarily with procurement and project management, and a lot of the focus is on infrastructure in different ways. Infrastructure is, however, very wide, so you can fit a lot of aspects into that. And if you want to learn more about the projects ongoing around the world, you can go into unops.org and you will find the kind of map that you see here on the slide as well. And that map will then allow you to click in and read about different ongoing projects and learn more about what we're doing. Then, of course, let's go to the why. And today we have a lot of quite important aspects to tackle in our world. And one of them is, of course, the climate. We know that we only have a few years left before there will be big parts of our planet that will no longer be possible to live in. And this is, of course, a huge challenge that we need to tackle. And I think we are quite many who feel that, of course, let's do this. Let's save the world. Let's pitch in whatever we have and do something. But the question is then maybe why? What can we do? How can we do this? And actually, this is what UNOPS started asking as well a few years back, because what we can see is that when we're procuring the products and services that are supposed to fill in the gaps and the needs that we have around the world, not all solutions exist today. We need to innovate, which is why we believe that innovation will help us. And this is actually something that all the big institutions of the world agrees on now, the World Bank, the OECD, etc., that in order to solve the big challenges of the world, we need to innovate, we need to be disruptive, and we need to be entrepreneurial, to take action to make sure things happen. So this is what we are set up to do. So how are we doing today when it comes to innovation, you may ask? And well, you can say that, of course, we see a lot of countries working quite heavily to promote innovation. Sweden is one of them, definitely. We have quite a lot of different initiatives ongoing and support that you can get if you want to work with innovations and start your own business and doing things. So yes, there is a lot of focus on this. But what is the outcome then, if we compare it to everything that we spend on this? Well, we believe we should get more out of it. And I'm no expert in the data here, but my boss, which is Jonas Svensson, he is the global head of innovation and technology in Human Ops. He had been looking into this quite closely and also on a thesis level. And one of the measures that he likes to bring up is this. And you can, of course, debate this in a lot of different aspects, but I think it's quite interesting that if you look at the patent registrations around the world, and the triadic patents, meaning that you have something protected both in Europe, the US, and in Japan, we had a quite nice increase in the curve up to 2006 when something happened. Then it decreases and it hasn't really recovered since. And what Jonas is saying here is that, well, actually, this has a lot of links to where the trend's starting shifting when it comes to innovation funding, where we became more entrepreneurial centric than actually having focus on innovation height. Because in order to solve the big problems of the world, we need to take the big steps, not only tweaking what we already have. So we need to really build up new ways of being. And actually, Jonas, who is a quite bold man, he says that in his meaning, looking at all this data, governments are maybe throwing away a lot of money here if we look at what actually could come out of all the efforts that are being made. So that was one reason why UNOPS felt that let's do something here. Let's make sure to facilitate what we can do to get the big new solutions that the world needs. And another interesting aspect here is the global perspective, because we see that, of course, like in Sweden, we have quite a lot of focus on entrepreneurship. If you look at less developed countries, actually there is a lot of more people starting businesses, of course, because of cultural differences, etc. But there is also a quite much bigger share of companies that are started by women. And this is quite interesting, because if we build on this and we work together with the experience, the best practices and everything that we have here in countries like Sweden, and link it to the entrepreneurship and the drive that we have in so many countries around the world, we think that we can make quite big things happen. And here we have a good example of the work that we've done with our center at Antigua and Barbuda. That's an example of a less developed area. And we had our partner Sony joining us for a hackathon there. And actually what they concluded there, that was before I came along, but it was that actually if you compare the ideas, etc., that came from the full-time innovation specialists at Sony to the entrepreneurs and the kind of less trained people at Antigua who participated in the hack, the local people, they often had the best ideas. Then they may not always have the, of course, knowledge on how to take them forward and how to build on it. But by putting these two aspects together, that can be a really strong collaboration. So that is also a reason here why we want to start centers around the world, working together on solving the challenges. Because of course, the local people that are living with it, if we look at, for instance, the big challenges in infrastructure, when we have floodings, when we have earthquakes and so on, of course, if you live with it every day, then you also know what's needed to be done. You understand the problem and you have such a strong sense of urgency to fix it. Then we all can go together and work based on that. So that is why our mission is to solve the big real world challenges with innovation. And the way we want to do this is to both make sure to bring game-changing ideas to market and also to facilitate new ways of collaboration. Because we're not here to replace what's already there. We're here to connect. because in the name of the UN and with the extensive network that we have, we can connect across borders that may not have been connected before. And in this, we want to establish a global ecosystem that should be sustainable in itself to live on and make sure to produce what the world needs. So if we look at this innovation ecosystem, we have certain components. And the first one is, of course, the deep understanding of the problems that we have in the local communities around the world, and that we also have with UN Ops personnel being present in so many countries and very remote places, etc. Of course, we need to combine this with creative people like you that have good ideas, and they can be anyone. It can be people working within a large multinational company. It can be someone that just happens to have a good idea but no company at all. It can be a startup. We don't know. We also don't know about the maturity of the ideas, because maybe you already have something which is quite mature that could actually work and be used already today, or maybe you just have a brilliant idea that is at a seed level. And we want to find the best ideas, no matter the maturity, no matter the format, and then we'll work to take it from there. We will bring in funding, we will bring in business opportunities, and this is then, of course, linked to the big business potential that we have in the world today, linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, among others. We want to make sure that we have the best possible knowledge and coaching. So we're teaming up with big universities around the world, also establishing collaborations in Sweden, of course, etc., to make sure that we have the best possible knowledge and research with us on this journey. And all of this will then be connected through a network of global innovation centers. And we're aiming at 15 to 20 centers around the world, where the majority will be in less developed countries. And each center will have a certain focus area. So if we look at the center in Sweden, we have a focus on deep tech. Then, of course, we don't only need to work on deep tech matters, but if we have an idea popping up somewhere around the world that is linked to deep tech, then probably it's a good idea to transfer that idea. Maybe it's in, came up in Africa or something like that. Maybe it's a good idea then to transfer that team to the incubator that we will establish in Sweden, because together with our partners in the local innovation ecosystem in Sweden, we can give them the best possible support to develop and become strong. So we can also say then that the centers in more developed countries such as Sweden, Japan that will just open, etc., we will focus on the bigger picture, on the bigger system, etc. We will work on the tools, methodology, and to have a toolbox in place that everyone can access and share and learn by. Then we will have the local centers around the world. They will still be called global innovation centers, but they will focus, like the one in Antigua, quite a lot on like ecotourism, for instance, which is a very big focus for Antigua and Barbuda. Of course, I want to mention the link to the Sustainable Development Goals, because this is, as we've heard earlier here in the presentation, the kind of language for how we work with sustainable development. And of course, we hope that through this program that we're establishing, we will actually tackle all of them in one or another way. But we have three that are the biggest focus for the program as such. And the first one is linked to the decent work and the economic growth. And this is really to make sure that we can build up strong economies, strong businesses that can help the society to develop as such. The next one is linked to innovation and infrastructure. And this is all about connecting the infrastructure. So of course, for us, opening an innovation center at Ideon in Sweden, we have so much already prepared, right? Because we can just go and knock on our neighbors' doors, and there we have incubators, and we have researchers, and we have so many smart people with a lot of good competence. But if you start an innovation center in Congo, for instance, it may not be as easy to get the competence and the infrastructure for innovation that we need, which is why we have to team up together and we have to establish this infrastructure digitally, etc., to make sure that we can still compensate for what's not being available locally. Then last but not least is, of course, goal 17, which is about the partnership and how we then collaborate across all different aspects, private, public sector, big, small players, etc., to make sure that we can work together. If we then look at Sweden as such, Sweden is then actually, of course, as I mentioned, based in Lund, and we have funding from Vinnova, and we are then the link between, on one hand, the global Innovation Center network, the UN, and all the partners, etc. And on the other hand, we have the link to Sweden. And of course, we will not only work with Lund and with the south of Sweden, we will work with Sweden as such. Of course, then we have to start somewhere. But this is where we are teaming up with Ideon Science Park and through their network, together with other science parks in Sweden, etc., we can then create a strong collaboration within the nation as such. So we have basically two big tasks that we're focusing on. And the first one, which is for us the biggest one in Sweden, that is the Innovation Incubator Program. And very simply explained, we have the steps that you see here in front of you. It starts by us launching a challenge. And we do this together with a global partner. The first one we launched was together with Sony, who was the first global partner to come on board. That challenge can be wide, but as we work here and come forward in the program, we want to be specific on different areas. So it may come challenges linked to energy, to oceans, etc., to make sure that we can then tackle the big problems of the world. Then when we have our challenge launched, it's up to anyone in the world, no matter where you are, no matter the maturity of your idea, etc., as I mentioned, you can apply to the challenge. Then we have a big task ahead to sort and select the ones that we think are the most relevant and interesting to invite to a boot camp. And the boot camp is something that we will deliver together with our partner MIT. They have a very strong concept that we are then now building on together with them. And the boot camp will then have the purpose of bringing in the most interesting ideas, fine-tuning, challenging, building milestone plans, etc. So that after the boot camp, we can then select the final ones that will be invited to join the incubation. And the way we will work in our incubator is not to just replicate everything that other local incubators in Sweden are doing, but we want to team up instead. So we want to deliver whatever support that these ideas need together with partners in the community that we are establishing. So through this, we will then bring in different coaches, different experts, different business developers, etc., that can help and that are the right ones to work on every single idea. So it will be a lot of matchmaking, etc., to set this up. Then there is actually no here before that the idea is out there and it's strong and it's working. But you will get an invitation 1 year at a time. And then if you feel that, well, there is still more work to be done that is suited for our incubator, then you may be invited to join another year and another year. Because we know that when it comes to deep tech, things will take time. And we need to invest that time to come to those big, interesting, disruptive solutions. So we have the first example of this. That is the Global Innovation Challenge that was launched here before Christmas. That was launched in Slush in Helsinki by Greta Faremo, who is the leader of UN Ops. And this one is quite wide, and that was intentional. It's about advancing resilient infrastructure in the face of climate change. So you can, of course, see that you can tie in so many different aspects in this. So it can be linked to kind of hard infrastructure like roads and hospitals and things like that. But it can also be linked to communication, to emergency response and things like that. So this was the first one, just to make sure to scout a bit what's out there, what are the interesting solutions that we could potentially work with. Then as we go, as I said, we will have more challenges launched, and then most likely they will be more and more specific in different areas that we're targeting. But what we're doing here is we're working on the selection. We are also now, with the current situation of COVID-19, it will probably be quite challenging to deliver the bootcamp live as we wanted to. We wanted to do that early summer. So we're looking into what we can do now with a virtual model, etc. But our aim is to have the incubator starting in Q3 this year. So that's a quite exciting journey. I can also mention already now that maybe if you have an idea that you want to send in to such a challenge, we are actually launching a challenge in Japan this week. And it will be a bit similar to this one, but focus more on tech. And that is because the center in Japan is going to open soon. And linked to that, we will then have a challenge for them to manage as well. But all these challenges that we're launching, depending on what solutions comes in, you may get an invitation to join us in Sweden or in Japan or any other center around the world, depending on how we see the fit to whatever your idea is targeting. Then the other big task that we're working on is what we call innovation aid. And innovation aid in this sense is more of how do we make sure to develop the infrastructure and the whole package around innovation work in less developed countries. So this is then us helping other countries to open centers, to train the staff, to make sure that they have the best possible tools, mentors, etc. around the world. And this will be a quite big task for us and very exciting as well. So with this, I want to invite you to team up with us and to help doing this together, because we are a small team of 3 and we cannot do this ourselves, and we don't want to. The strength is in us collaborating. So what we're doing is setting up a community, and this we do together with Ideon Science Park for the Swedish one. Then we're also having a kind of global community for the big players such as Sony, etc. And we will actually have a call for action coming out here as soon as we know which areas the ideas are that we will target in the first round of the incubator. Then we will do a call for action and reach out to find the best possible partners to help supporting these ideas. So please stay tuned. I will tell you soon how you can do that. But just to mention, the community as such is something that we are building up now with a membership model. And we want this to be kind of a pay what you can, meaning that if you are a big company like Sony, then you have a bigger price tag, and you can then also get kind of a global collaboration if you have that organization and muscles that can take it. But if you are maybe a single person driving your own company and you still want to join us, then you're very welcome to do that as an individual contributor as well. Of course, paying a much less fee. But we want everyone that is joining here to have some kind of skin in the game and to invest then engagement and so on in this community to make sure that we can collaborate and have a strong outcome. And also for the partners joining here, there will be an opportunity to invest in the companies that we are actually bringing into the incubator. Also, of course, to access and to help building the toolbox that we're establishing. And then as we establish everything, we will also make sure to arrange interesting lectures and events, etc. And hopefully we can then also bring in some very interesting speakers, etc., that are hard to get otherwise. Also, what we can see with UNOPS as such is that just as Business Sweden we're talking about before, UNOPS can also help open doors to other countries into the UN system. And that is something that we can offer to our members as a facilitated service, actually. We also want to make sure that everyone who's joining the community is active in terms of working with the Sustainable Development Goals, because that's basically the foundation for everything. And it's so important that we're all stepping in here, that we're not just thinking that the ones over there in other countries, they are the ones that should work on it, because we all have our responsibility to take. And here we want to do what we can to educate around the Sustainable Development Goals, to coach and share best practices and so on to make this work really, really strong. Then what we see as well, for instance, from Sony, is that we have seen quite an increase of an engagement when it comes to employees' motivation, etc. And that's, of course, a very nice side effect. Another thing that may be relevant for you, you heard about the UNGM before, the global marketplace, where you can, of course, find quite a lot of interesting information around procurement for UN. But there is one local initiative in UN Ops as well that I want to mention, called the Possibilities Portal. Because if you have something commercial already now, a product or a service that you think could be relevant for the UN Ops and the UN to procure, then please go into unops.org/possibilities and register at the Possibilities Portal. And maybe my colleagues there will contact you. So that could be an interesting route as well. That was it, what I wanted to share with you today. I want to encourage all of you, if you're not doing this already, to just sign up for the newsletter from the Ideon Science Park, because that is our main local communication channel right now. So there you will be able to see the call for actions and so on as we go. You can, of course, also go into the web, unops.org. That is where you will find the current challenge that we're evaluating, and also when we're launching the one in Japan here in a few days, that will be posted there. If you want to get in touch, you're very welcome to connect through email to us at gic.sweden@unops.org and also through LinkedIn. So that's it for now. I would like to open up if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for explaining to us what the UN Ops Global Innovation Center in Sweden is all about. So please, if you have any questions, write them in the chat and I will read them now.
Crystal clear, hopefully.
All right, then if there are no questions right now, we will move on to hear from Sten Stenbeck of RISE.
Great.
Good, thank you. I'll just take the PowerPoint there. You see the PowerPoint now?
Yeah, we can see it.
Good. Do I need to put it in screenplay like this? Yeah?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Great. I hope you are still awake. I got very much awake by this inspiring presentation by Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I will then discuss more on a project that we have just sent in an application for to the Vinnova UDI program, which is the Challenge-Driven Innovation Program, which is very much connected to what we have been talking about this morning, which means that we look at what are the links to get from dread to bread in humanitarian crisis, which means how can we actually deliver more circular solutions out in the field. But first of all, I could also just say something about RISE, which is a fairly new brand in Sweden, which is actually a 100% governmental state-owned research organization, the Swedish research institution and innovation partner for every part of society. And we are actually scattered in Sweden on 35 locations in Sweden, and we have about 2,800 employees. We do a lot of research work, which means a lot of academic publications, or we also have a lot of test beds, 130, which means that we do a lot of verification, certification, but also innovation support for many companies or institutions in Sweden. Applier for Vinnova funds, so we have a lot of Vinnova projects. We have quite a lot of EU funded projects as well. We are also built from many former industrial research institutes. So we have been there for a long time, even though the brand BRICE, Research Institute of Sweden, is from a couple of years back, just like 3 years back. Before it was called SP, Statens Provningsanstalt, Science Partner, or Swedish ICT, or these kind of brands. But and that was research institutes for industry, but also SP was a governmental. So anyway, so we have a lot of projects going on, and what we're doing is that we do projects within vision and strategy when it comes to innovation and research. We could do research and development work for an organization, or a company. Many of the big brands actually outsource research and development to us. But we could also do public-private partnerships that we do, of course, within these EU projects, and also with public institutions of various kinds. And of course, industrialization and quality assurance is a big part of what we're doing, which can be shown in this, that the business sector is actually financing most of our actions. But we also do a lot of application for public funds, and we also get some co-funding for some of the infrastructure in research and development in Sweden, and we also work with EU funds. So it's that's in a nutshell a little bit on RISE, Research Institutes of Sweden. But then coming back to the project, we have From Dread to Bread in Humanitarian Crisis, and our aim is to get this started from the 1st of September 2020, running for 2 years. My background is that I've been living in Southern Africa for 6 years. I've been working on assisting Botswana in setting up an innovation hub, which is actually close to what you said, Sarah, before on how to capacity building on local innovation hubs around the world, where Botswana was setting up an innovation hub in Southern Africa. And I assisted them in a clean technology center together with Lund University at that time. I stayed there for 6 years doing a lot of innovation projects on clean technologies. So coming back to Sweden, I still had that passion on doing sustainable projects, sustainable clean technology development. So then this project was very handy. So the project objective is to develop tools that improve the opportunities for innovators and aid organizations to bring more circular, inclusive, and sustainable innovations to those in need. We have a very much focus on looking at the humanitarian crisis, but to be able to deliver to the humanitarian crisis, you often need to have experience from the field in the sort of the development and poverty eradication development aid as well. So therefore, of course, innovations can be set up there, but there are also a focus very much on off-grid solutions which can be used anywhere in the world, from small islands in Stockholm archipelago to anywhere else. But anyway, what is the problem that this project is actually trying to solve? Well, the challenge is, of course, people die due to bad design sanitation. This is a picture from Lebanon where we have a case. And what we could say is that the solution don't fully understand the local context and the social, culture, and ecological requirements that are on the technology itself or on the business models. We see there is a gap in the innovation system on understanding the local conditions. Every time we discuss with the innovators, we understand that coming down to the spots, the field, the whole the environment is so direct, saying to them that they had ideas and theories before, but now they have to develop their innovation in a different way. So this is what we try to do. And of course, the worldwide problem we have of sanitation, there is heaps of deaths from unsafe water, sanitation, hygiene, and therefore we have developed 4 case studies in this project. We have a case study in Lebanon. We have a case study where we actually work with a local global humanitarian organization called Solidarity International. We also have, which is in a refugee setting. We also have a case study in Rwanda, where we are trying with checking up with innovation in water. And we also have in Bolivia and in South Africa. And all these cases are just case studies to develop more experience from testing and validation, because we want to develop a better verification, validation, evaluation tools for innovation. Looking at the sector, you could see that it's a lot of things happening around the world. And as we saw before from Business Sweden, but also from Sarah, is that unfortunately there are a lot of more disasters happening around the world. So there is unfortunately an increasing market in this area. So there is a need for more innovation, more effective innovations to tackle all these challenges that are happening around the world. So there is an opportunity of a window for very intelligent, smart innovations, clean technology, sustainable circular solutions. Many words for the same thing. So what is the project about? Well, the project is about to improve the conditions for innovators to be able to meet relief organizations' demands. That is a very important thing, where we develop tools for this. This to enable innovation to reach vulnerable populations in humanitarian crisis. And the project will test innovative circular solutions in real environments, upscale and export. And the whole idea is, through these case studies, to develop generic tools that can be used for many different innovations. We are focusing in the water and sanitation and health area, but we anticipate that these tools can be used for many upcoming new innovations. So what we do is that we develop these test beds in the field. We have the Lebanon, which is a critical phase of refugee setting, really. It's a refugee camp setting. And then we have the Bolivia and Rwanda, which is a more stabilized, more resource poor environment, which is also a good experience. And then we have South Africa, which is a middle income country, but which still have a lot of poverty and difficulties. But we could have that as an example of reconstruction. we are working together with a very skilled institute there, the Water Research Institute Commission. So we're looking into water and sanitation off-grid solutions that are developed in our case studies. And the whole idea is to get products more relevant during crisis and contribute to sustainable development of their users. So the whole idea is to develop tools for innovators that really want to understand the local conditions. So the implementation focuses on identifying success factors for off-grid solution, which is quite a big work package in our work, is to understand what is important for an off-grid solution to actually work, because in the humanitarian crisis you often need off-grid solutions. We also wanted to contextualize methods for testing, demonstration and validation that respond to buyers' requirements and meet the needs of the most vulnerable, which means that we will identify through artificial intelligence, we'll develop tools for this. So that are quality assured tools for developing and scaling up innovations, because we'll work together with also scaling up organizations, for instance, the Win Water in Lund, which is working with water and sanitation and health. But we really want to also partner with you in the Innovation Center, the Global Innovation Center, which is very interesting to hear all your work, Sara. And also communicate result, of course, which is all the results we do to stakeholders and innovate in the innovation system. But the whole idea is to understand better how can we validate and get verification in the procurement. Because what we see in many procurements from UN and other procurements, as Claes has been telling from Business Sweden, but also now Sara and also the medical experience there, is that it is very important to have pilot studies, to have verification from the field, because without any field experience or concrete test verification, it's difficult to sell anything to these kind of organizations. So that's really where we try to improve the innovation system on that area. So innovations that we'll anticipate from this project is this kind of tool for validation and evaluation of clients' requirements and the sustainable development goals. We'll use artificial intelligence, a tool called inclusive evaluation, where we will incorporate many of the procurement requirements that are put in UN procurements into a tool, web-based tool, where companies can actually easily, better and more easy understand the requirements that are on procurements from these kind of organizations, but also how their innovation could contribute better to the sustainable development goals. We'll also develop a tool for scaling up and export, and what is important in the scale up and in the export initiatives here. And this would also be very interesting to partner with you at the Global Innovation Center and see how we can do that together with all your work that you are doing. And then also many of these off-grid solutions, they are decentralized solutions standing alone somewhere. Therefore, we need to also develop an Internet of Things tool for operations and maintenance of decentralized sanitation systems, which is a part of the project as well. And of course, the case studies will be part of the project, which are these 5 companies that are in our case studies that already have developed pilots of their innovations, and they are now put Sunny Seas in Bolivia, where we do an evaluation and validation of their innovation. And Treewell nature-based wastewater treatment is in Lebanon and in South Africa. And the whole idea is to do validation together with local organizations, and thereby getting more experience from all that work and understand what is important for UNICEF, what is important for the local NGOs, to understand better and put that into the tool that we are working on. Then there is also a green water station, water purification in Rwanda, where we also connect with local partners to understand what is important for that kind of innovation. We have Pure Biosynergy. It's a disinfection unit, which is also working in Rwanda primarily, but we also have connections to Lebanon. And then a very new innovation called Millennium Desalination Device, which is a way of desalinate water and clean the water, which is in a fairly early stage in readiness level though, but is part of the project as well since before. So what are the impact and effects of these? Well, the whole idea is to improve the conditions for circular and long-term sustainable off-grid solutions, and better successfully reach out to markets in inaccessible places and to the most vulnerable. And the whole idea is to really include the local conditions and the local requirements into a tool which can be generic and used for many innovations in the innovation system, as a way of getting quicker to the market, getting quicker evaluation of what your product, your new prototype needs to meet to win the procurements of UN or the big international organizations. And the whole idea is to create the means to empower vulnerable populations to build resilience. Of course, from dread to bread, these kind of circular solutions that actually creates a local development and a local livelihood development. Of course, we have a big focus on the sustainable development goals in the project. What we could say is, of course, the partnership number 7 is sort of the basics of the project, where we try to link up to UN organizations and humanitarian organizations. But we have a focus then on the clean water and sanitation goal as well, because it's a focus on wash solutions. But then industry innovation and infrastructure is part of the work, of course. Responsible consumption and production is an effect of this. We look into good health and well-being as these. We need to have circular solutions that are actually improving for local circumstances. We also do things in clean energy, because to have circular solutions in wash, you also need energy, and therefore we're also looking into clean energy. And then, of course, I would not say of course, but climate change is always in our frame, as well as in this case zero hunger, because some of the innovations that we're looking for is actually increasing the yields for agriculture goods. So we believe that water and circular solutions in sanitation will actually improve the yields and there also the food production. So looking more into the work packages of this project, we have the work package 1, which is project coordination, which is not so interesting in this case, but we'll have a big work on success factors of off-grid, which is a big work package to understand the circumstances and understand why off-grid can actually be, what are the important factors for them to work both on the humanitarian market, but also generally in the off-grid. Because off-grid solutions, we see decentralized solutions coming up more and more in the world markets. For instance, if you say, like previously, you built big water and wastewater treatment plants, which was good in scale, but now it's increasing a market for decentralized systems which are scalable to be in many thousands of places, and you can have the same solution of thousands of places. So therefore it's have a scale benefit because of that. So the success factors for off-grid solutions is important for the innovation system to understand. And then there is a big work on work package 3, development of tools for testing and market introduction of innovations, where we work very closely with this artificial intelligence tool. We also work closely with the Swedish incubators and science park and RISE platform called Grow Sweden platform, where they're looking at scale up and export methodologies. And in that work, I think it would be very interesting to also work closely with Global Innovation Center and other initiatives that we have in the Swedish export promotion work, just to sort of unify our efforts on scaling up good innovations, good circular innovations. And then, of course, in the work package 4, the case studies, the product development in test beds abroad and in Sweden is a work package where these 5 companies actually work to develop their products and validate them and to get them closer to the market and understand the local conditions. Connected to this work, we have the reference group where we have need owners, where we have the market actors, and also experts of various kinds that have been working in this area for a long time. We have the Swedish Red Cross, we have the Business Sweden, we have Swedfund, we have different organizations, but we also have need owners or humanitarian organization within the project as well as project partners. I will come back to that more. One very important reference group, which is the Global WASH Cluster, is actually a global initiative led by UNICEF on putting together all the organizations that work in humanitarian aid in global WASH. It's coordinated by UNICEF to get all these organizations to better work together in humanitarian relief. Here you can see all the main global organizations that are part of the Global WASH Cluster. So the Global WASH Cluster is a very key member of our reference group because we see them as the representatives from the clients, more or less. All these organizations work. And one of them in the middle there, called Solidarité International, is a French global organization, quite similar to, for instance, to the Red Cross. They are actually part of the project as well. So we see all, and then we have the UN organizations there as well. What they are doing is that they also do a global WASH online platform where we are connected to see if these tools can be used in their global marketplace, which is a platform that goes online during the same period as our project. What they have put together is a very important good work on requirements of design and logistics in crisis. So the Global WASH Cluster is a very important stakeholder and in our reference group. So talking about the different project partners and the reference group, here is a list of all the, and we have actually put them then into different, in the NGO sector. There we have 2 NGOs in the project, but then we also have key NGOs as part of the reference group. We have to the right up there, we have the businesses and the companies as part of the group. And you see there these companies that I mentioned before. We also have what we could call a big company. It's called Backer AB, which has offices in the whole world. A representative from big storbolag, the big companies in Sweden. They are based in Skåne, Backer. So there are these companies, startups, and companies coming up with new projects. But these are case studies, I would say. I mean, they are all representing small and medium-sized enterprises in our project. Parametric, the one in the first one up there, is actually the one behind who has developed a very interesting evaluation software which is based on artificial intelligence work. And then we work together with public agencies, and they are in our reference group, where we can find, for instance, SIDA is part of the reference group, and MSB, the Swedish contingency authority. We have Swedfund, we have UNICEF, and Business Sweden. And then we have RISE. Of course, we are the lead in this project, but we also work very closely with the Stockholm Environmental Institute. We work closely with the Swedish Incubators and Science Park organization that is coordinating the science parks in Sweden. We also work together with Wind Water as an important incubator in the Wash area. We have an institute in Lebanon that is part of the project. We have also the University. And I should actually have Malmö University on the list, which is, I don't know why it went out, but Malmö University actually is developing a course for engineers, and they are really much in the project, where they are going to use this tool as part of a course for engineers. So Malmö University is a very important project partner in our work, where they actually will use this tool together with us. So that is the different partners. We have quite a few of them, and especially quite a lot of reference group partners as well. And then we have the companies that are part of this this project. This is the plant in Bolivia. This is the pilot plants that are built in Lebanon. This is in Rwanda that we are evaluating. And then also the Parametrics artificial intelligence tool for validation that will also be part of the project. I will not go very much into that because I think my time is getting out. And just to say that these were an example of the different partners we work with. And if you have any further questions, just come back to me, and you'll find my details here.
Thank you very much, Sten. If anyone has questions about this project, please feel free to write them in the chat now.
Yeah, so the whole project will hopefully start in the 1st of September. So it's still an application process in this. So it's an application work, of course. So there is a risk always that it doesn't go through, but we have a good partnership at least, and I think we'll do something out of it anyway, because of the big connections we have.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If anybody had questions for any of the other presenters and didn't have the chance to ask earlier, please feel free to write them now. Something I would ask to all of the presenters is, what do you find to be the most common mistake when companies try to engage with the platforms you work on or with these opportunities you've discussed? Is there anything you've seen that comes up again and again? Maybe we can start with Claes from Business Sweden. What is the most common challenge that companies face when they're trying to engage with the UN procurement system? The most common mistake? Okay, Claes seems to still be muted. Sarah, do you have any insights? Have you experienced anything at the UNOPS Global Innovation Center that you think would be interesting for these companies to hear?
Well, actually, as we are not working directly with the procurement, I can unfortunately not share any intelligence on that. But I think for us, we are building everything up right now. We are a startup ourselves. We are building processes and the whole system as we go. So I cannot say that we have a lot of experience already, but we will build it. And then I will be happy to come back.
And you mentioned a little bit about some upcoming work related to COVID-19, and you thought there might be some calls emerging out of that. Do you have a sense of the timeline for that process?
Actually, I'm not involved in that work directly, but I know that if you go into unops.org on the front page, there is just a lot of reading linked to this. I haven't had a chance now to read the details myself, but I know that UNOPS is heavily focused on just making sure to procure what the world needs right now. So there is a lot of needs linked to that. So I encourage you, if you're interested, to go in and read there. There is quite a big initiative ongoing.
Great, thank you for that insight. And Stan, to come back to you maybe, what do you think the best way would be for companies that would like to work with this platform that you're building up? How can they engage with you and really make the most of it?
Yeah, I think when the project is up and running, I think what happens is that we will this tool development will be an important tool that can be used for validation in the fields, but also the validation of different new products and services that are coming into the market. In that case, then they can contact us, and either they will be part of the Grow Sweden platform work, or if we find suitable incubators that are partners with us and non-partners at the moment. It could be Global Innovation Center or Business Sweden, or that could be part. But what we do is that we develop this tool within the project, and we'll try to then communicate all the work to different stakeholders and new innovators that can use this tool. So I think contact us, and we'll try to connect them to partners we have as much as possible.
And when will the platform launch again?
From our side?
Yes.
Yeah, well, the project will start in September if we get the finance, and then it will work 2 years, and we'll also connect very much to the global WASH cluster and their marketplace, which will be done during the next year, then 2021. So probably during the 2021 we have a better concrete view of the platform and how we can incorporate with other platforms like that we have seen today.
Great, that's good to know. So to any of the attendees today that are interested in engaging with any of these platforms you've heard about, make sure you go to the UNOPS site so you can see all of the opportunities that are emerging there. And we expect some updates then about this interesting platform from RISE's side in 2021. And I would also say that make sure you go to Sustainable Business Hub's webpage and sign up for our newsletter, because we will certainly be helping to spread opportunities like this to our network. So make sure you go there for any updates. And I will now ask one last time, if anybody has questions for the panelists, please take advantage of this opportunity. Otherwise, feel free to write to me. My email can be found on the registration page for this event, and I will do my best to connect you to the panelist that is most relevant to your question. So thank you again very much to all of our panelists for explaining all of these interesting platforms and letting us know about these opportunities that are emerging. And with that, I will close the webinar. So thank you all very much for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome.